This morning, a bombshell development in a murder-for-hire scheme. New body camera video shows Florida police arresting 73-year-old grandma Donald Adelson at Miami International Airport as she and her husband attempt to board a one-way flight to Vietnam.
A prominent Florida professor and attorney, Dan Markel, was shot in his Tallahassee home on July 18, 2014. He died 14 hours later at a hospital. Markel was born in an affluent Canadian Jewish family, and at the time of his death he was in the midst of a contentious custody battle with his ex-wife Wendy Adelson. Wendy was also an attorney and was born in a very affluent family in Florida.
Markel had offered Wendy a teaching position too, on a contract basis. He and Wendy then get engaged.
To me, it seemed like a fairly conventional Jewish wedding. Lots of rabbis came, and there was dancing and smiling. She was a happy bride.
Although the Markels and the Adelsons were both paying for the wedding, it was Wendy's parents who hired the caterer. Dan had wanted the wedding to be strictly kosher, but
when he showed up to his own wedding, he learned that actually the wedding was not going to be kosher, and I think that was a very devastating moment for him.
And it would set the table for things that developed later on. In fact, played a part in that divide between the in-laws and
Follow our summary of this horrific story on how a family conspired and agreed to commit murder, with latest evidence suggesting that Donna, the former mother-in-law of the victim, was the mastermind, at the very least an accomplice as a narcissist and controlling matriarchy who might have planned the whole murder. By mid-2015, authorities had potential suspects Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia. They announced first-degree murder charges against Rivera and Garcia in May 2016 for Dan Markel's murder.
He had 2 children with his wife, Wendy Adelson. But when Dan and Wendy's marriage broke up, things got very bitter, especially concerning the custody of their children. Wendy wanted to relocate 400 miles away in South Florida, where her parents, Harvey and Donna, lived and ran the family's very successful dental practice. Wendy's brother, Charlie, also lived there and was also a dentist in the family's practice. In court, Dan was winning, and the judge was not on board with Wendy's plan to move the children away from their father and away from Tallahassee. But in the end, Wendy did move to South Florida with the children. That's because Dan was shot and killed in his driveway. It was a murder for hire, and a couple of gang members and a former shot girl from a nightclub have been convicted in the plot.
This woman behind bars charged with first-degree murder, accused in connection to the killing of a prominent law professor at Florida State University. Dan Markel was shot to death in the garage of his Tallahassee home in 2014.
But no one has been held responsible for hiring the gang member hitmen. Wendy's brother Charlie has now been accused and is now going to stand trial as the mastermind behind this deadly plot.
On the day after the killing.
I have no idea.
You knew he was planning to leave town the next day, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Did you convey that information to anyone?
Absolutely not.
Do you want the culpable parties held accountable for murdering the father of your children?
Absolutely. I'm grateful they're already in jail.
But not if it's your family.
It's not my family.
Did your dad get any big gifts for his 70th?
I don't remember.
Was the murder of Dan Markel your dad's big gift?
I mean, that's... Of course not. That's a horrible thing to say.
Tense. Grilling her on her alleged involvement and poking holes in her brother's defense.
Were you involved in any way in the plot to kill your ex-husband?
Absolutely not.
Did you know it was going to happen, but maybe not know the details?
I knew nothing.
Is that why you went to the crime scene on the day of the homicide?
I did not go to the crime scene on the day of the homicide.
Have you ever privately confronted your brother about his role or possible role in the murder?
My attorney has advised me not to have conversations with anyone in my family about the case.
You suspected your brother could have been a part of this, right?
I suspected lots of people could have been a part of it.
But he was one of the people, right?
While I was talking with law enforcement for 6 hours, terrified out of my mind, I offered them every possible idea I could come up with.
Right, and one of the possible ideas was that your brother could have murdered your child's father.
I didn't
right?
really believe that was possible.
When did you learn that Catherine Magbanua was blackmailing your brother for the murder of your ex-husband?
Today.
When you testified, were you truthful with the jury?
No, ma'am, I was not.
What was your defense when you were tried?
That I had nothing to do with it.
Was that true?
No, ma'am, it was not.
Were you in the middle?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And anything promised you anything for your testimony here today?
No, ma'am.
Weren't you originally offered immunity for cooperation in this case?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
But you didn't take us up on that.
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Because you thought you could get off completely.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Who came up with the idea to kill Dan Markel?
Despite the state offering immunity to the defendant in 2016, she refused to be a state witness, but only testified 5 years later after she realized the case was no longer in her favor. The FBI was able to decode an old recording between Charlie and Ms. Catherine. The FBI having the technology to decode this recording gave the whole case a boost.
Robert Wheeler handed down Magbanua's sentence for count 1, first-degree murder. She was given life in prison with no eligibility for the probation or parole. For count 2, she was sentenced to 30 years, and for count 3, she was given another 30 years.
In his defense, Charlie argued that he was threatened and blackmailed by the killers for $1 million.
Did you have any contact with the thugs that were getting your money for 2 years?
No.
Did anybody put a gun to your head?
I was told that I would be killed in 48 hours if I didn't pay up.
I heard you say that, but my question is, did anyone put a gun to your head?
You asked me, did anyone pull a gun on me?
That's what
Is
I
that
asked
your question? No, nobody pulled the firearm on me.
It has been a fascinating trial for Charlie Adelson, the man accused of orchestrating the plot to murder FSU law professor Dan Markel. From a shocking opening statement to tense cross-examination to secret recordings to the defendant on the stand.
30th in the murder for hire of her son-in-law, Dan Markel. He was a law professor at Florida State University. Adelson allegedly conspired with her son, Dr. Charlie Adelson, to kill Markel back in 2014. Markel was in the middle of a nasty custody battle with Donna Adelson's daughter. Charlie Adelson was convicted last year. His mother was arrested days later at Miami International Airport as she and her husband were boarding a flight to Vietnam. Donna Adelson has entered a not guilty plea.
Your brother has known who killed your child's father, and you didn't know.
I did not know.
This isn't a story about the happy ever afters, the lucky ones, the couples who grow more inseparable with age. Not even close.
Why tell the truth now?
I believe that the truth needed to come out now so that the family can get some type of closure.
Why didn't the truth need to come out last year or the year before or the year before that?
I was trying to defend myself.
You were trying to get off?
Yes, ma'am.
Please share and subscribe to the channel for more summarized real-life stories.